Welcome, everyone. I'm Fred Kemp. I'm the Atlantic Council President and CEO. And thank you so much for joining us today via Zoom for our virtual chat with Dr. Fatih Birol, the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. I'm sorry that we got started a little bit late. We've been having some technical difficulties with the chat. We're all linked up with Dr. Birol now. If during the course of this chat we have trouble with some of the sound or picture, then we'll ask Dr. Birol to go on to sound only. But at this point, we'll go this way. The Atlantic Council came at this period of time with a double mission. One of them was to protect our staff and our community. So we went to telework very, very early on. The second was, and this is contrary to social distancing, is how can we be as collaborative as we can with our global community? And so we've actually ramped up the convenings that we're doing. And in many cases, we've got even more people online because we feel it's even more crucial now than ever before to perform our mission of working with friends and allies to shape the future and to do it as common cause. And this is a part of what we're doing with Dr. Birol and with our Global Energy Center. And I really thank him and thank all of you for being there. In January, Dr. Birol spoke to our annual Global Energy Forum in Abu Dhabi. And he highlighted the growing disparity between perceptions and realities in energy markets, particularly as they relate to climate and emissions. He warned of market volatility that could be sparked by an incomplete understanding of the significance, the remaining significance of traditional fossil fuels in the energy mix. With none of us could have imagined, Dr. Birol, is the really unique, never happened in the world before, simultaneous supply and demand shock of COVID-19. So maybe I'll start there. And particularly, we know that it's going to affect all energy markets: coal, oil, gas, LNG, wind, solar. All have suffered significant losses in the stock market, some more than others. But why don't we start with oil? Because this shock of the biggest consuming market, China, came also at the time of an oil price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. So as the world grapples with its response to this crisis, I wonder if you can talk about how you see things short term, but also what kind of medium term and longer term impact this could have, particularly, and let's start with oil markets, Dr. Birol. And welcome to all of you to be on. Let me just say one other thing. We've got 800 participants in Zoom. We're going on Twitter through Periscope Live. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook Live. On the IE website. So to be honest, we are actually reaching more people than we even do with our very large annual energy forum in Abu Dhabi. So Dr. Birol, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kemp. It's a great pleasure to see you, even through the video here. And my sympathy to, first of all, to the colleagues at the Atlantic Council. And like yourselves, we at the IEA, since 10 days, we are teleworking. The entire Paris, and as such, I am locked down in my apartment now. And it is great to talk to you. And what I realized, Mr. Kemp, the social distancing bringing us closer. This is very interesting, but I see that we are getting closer. There is a sense of solidarity among the colleagues around the world. This is much appreciated. Now, of course, this creates some challenges for our communication, as we are experiencing in the last couple of minutes. But despite those, I am sure Atlantic Council, IEA, and all the colleagues, hundreds of colleagues listening us will overcome those challenges. Now, of course, coronavirus is a major medical problem, health problem, We are all facing it. All the governments around the world are putting emphasis on the policies to push back this big challenge. There is an economic challenge coming on. We are facing a major economic meltdown around the world. And there are also, of course, energy aspects to that. Now, in terms of oil markets, we are seeing a unique period in the oil markets. You know very well, Mr. Kemp, like many other colleagues in Atlantic Council and the colleagues who are participating in this discussion, we have seen in the past decline in oil demand. It's not the first time we are seeing this decline. We have seen also in the past the oversupply, huge overhang of oil production. It is also not new. But for the first time, since decades, for the first time, we are seeing both of them so big and at the same time, you say unique in the history of oil markets. And it is the reason we are seeing the oil prices $20, around $20 as a result of major supply overhang because of the policies of the countries, some of the leading producers, but also a major decline in the oil demand. And this will have, I am sure, significant consequences for the next years to come.
I think I am, for the moment, not hearing Fatih's voice. Jackson, what the situation won't?
I believe just Fatih finished his thought.
Oh, did he finish his thought? Okay, sorry about that. So, Dr. Birol, sorry, I didn't know you were finished with your thought. Let me ask you a question. So, at the beginning, like in February this year, the predicted global oil demand was from IEA was that it would grow at 825,000 barrels a day. Most recently, it's been a decline of 90,000 barrels a day from 2019 to about 99.9 barrels a day. With China having hit shock, and now we are where we are with Europe and the United States, do you have a forecast for demand at this point? And then do you think that you've said before the impact of the coronavirus on oil markets may be temporary, that's a quote, but the longer term challenges facing the world supplier is not going to go away. So maybe a short term look at the market, but also what that we're going through right now may have a medium or even longer term impact on markets, particularly oil markets.
So when I look at the markets, there are, of the current shock we are seeing, there are two components of that. First of all, there is a oversupply, huge overhang of supply, lots of production as a result of some policies driven by some key producers, but at the same time, huge decline of oil. And as a result of that, I would expect significant decline in the first quarter this year, and even a bigger decline in the second quarter this year. There is a lot of attention in the debate, in the oil market debate, to what the producing countries do and will do. This is very important. Saudi Arabia, Russia, and others. But I believe as important as that, if not more important, there is a huge drop, free fall of global oil demand. These are the two important components of the shock we are seeing. And as a result, we have now oil prices very low. There are lots of implications. I can pick up any of them. One of them will be very close to my heart, because I was recently in Iraq, in Baghdad, the countries like Iraq, Algeria, Nigeria, these countries, Oman, these countries will be very badly affected. In Iraq, for example, 90% of the government budget comes from the oil revenues. And with the current prices, the revenues for Iraq is enough to pay the half of the salaries of the government employees, not even the salaries of the everybody there. Leave alone the expenses, spending for health, education, and other things. And this will create a lot of social and political issues, political problems in a country where the political situation is very fragile. I just give you one example. We will see major implications on the global oil industry. We will see a lot of layoffs in the oil companies, oil service companies, and others. There will be a big change, major implications for the oil industry and the countries whose economies are closely linked to oil prices and oil revenues.
Thank you for that. So I've got a couple of more questions from my part, but I also want to tell to all of those that are listening to us through various channels, you can submit questions via Zoom using the chat button at the bottom of your screen. So that's for Zoom. Tweeting, you can tweet your questions using the hashtag AC Energy, or on Facebook, you can submit the questions via Facebook via the comments section on the live stream. This is a rather large event, so we won't be able to get to all of you, but we'd be delighted to see your questions, and we'll certainly take whatever of them we can to Dr. Birol. So, Dr. Birol, you talked earlier about Russian roulette being played in this Russian-Saudi price game, and said there could be quote-unquote grave consequences. Now that we've been at this for a little bit, to what extent do you think that the Russian-Saudi oil price war was a miscalculation on one or both sides? Because of the fall of the ruble, some are saying that Russia can produce almost as cheaply as the Saudis right now. So how and when do you imagine this will be resolved? And then with what impact, of course, that was President Putin's desire, what impact on alternative energy producers in the United States?
So for Russia made a clear statement a few weeks ago. They say a key target, an objective for their policy is to wipe out shale oil. So this is very clear. And it is right that with these prices, we will see a major decline in the shale production in the United States. No question about that. Maybe not this quarter, but next quarter and the following quarters, we will see. This is for sure. Now, this is, in my view, following for example, European energy debate since some time. This is not new. I have seen this movie before. I have seen this movie in a smaller screen, if I may say so, in terms of the natural gas markets in Europe. Russia, in order to keep its share, increasing its share in the European natural gas markets, reduced the prices. They were ready to lose some revenues, but they wanted to keep or increase their market share in European gas markets. It was the movie I saw in a small screen. Now it's in a giant screen, and it's oil. Now, what we are seeing is that this will be serious implications on shale. But what I am thinking, Mr. Kemp, is that definitely shale oil will go down, the production, but geology is there, know-how is there, technology is there. When the prices recover, it will surprise many that the shale oil production will bounce back and bounce back strongly. And it is the reason why I said this is, in my view, playing a Russian roulette, and we may see it is going to come back when the prices and the economy recover. But in the meantime, there will be a huge suffering on the U.S. shale oil industry. Coming back to Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia has been a country which provided, which was a stabilizer of the oil markets several years based on their past record. And being the president of the G20 this year, one would expect that the Saudi Arabia will provide a constructive support to the stabilization of the global oil markets based on their past records. Having said that, I want to put things in a context. Oil demand is in a free fall. Let me put it this way, very simply. Today, global oil demand is about 100 million barrels per day, the total oil we use in the world. And 60% of it we use for transportation, for cars, trucks, and jets. And today, 3 billion people in the world are locked down. As a result of that, we may well see sometime throughout this year, demand to fall down, as some say, about 20 million barrels per day. This is 20 million barrels per day demand. And we talk about this Saudi Arabia and Russia, 2-3 million barrels per day additional production coming to the markets. Just to put it in a context that we have two challenges. It will be, of course, very important. Saudi Arabia and the other countries made a positive contribution to the stability of the oil and the financial markets. But we have another challenge, if not bigger. It is the huge decline of oil demand in the world. In the past, we have seen when there was a global financial crisis, as a result of the economic slowdown or decline, correspondingly, oil demand went down as well. But this time it is different. The impact of the meltdown on oil is disproportional because it is not only the economy, a bad economy reflecting the activity, but also people cannot move. We are restricted. Let me take aviation, just as an example. The share of aviation today in the global economy is about 1%. But the share of aviation in global oil consumption is close to 10%. So therefore, it is disproportional. And I believe the issue of the producing countries taking decisions to make a positive contribution to the financial and oil market stability is extremely important. But as important as that is the almost free fall of global oil consumption today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. And you answered, we're getting a stream of wonderful questions, and you answered some of them already. We had a question, for example, from Bloomberg News and from Javier Blas about the reduction in oil demand. And you said it could go as far as 20 million barrels per day in terms of reduction. Just very quickly, just to get the numbers right, where is it right now according to your estimates? And you're saying that 20 million is where is the direction it could be going in?
So, first of all, My best regards to Javier, to him, and to all the Spanish colleagues. Spain is going through very difficult times, and my sympathy and solidarity with the Javier and all the Spanish people and the citizens of Spain. Now, I gave 20 million as a indicative number when I said the 60% of the oil consumption goes to transportation sector, and today 3 billion people cannot move, no mobility. So as a result, it can go towards 20 million barrels per day. But we are, in 2 weeks of time, we are going to publish our oil market report. We'll give a clear answer to the how bad the oil demand decline is to everybody in a precise manner. But
and then just one other short fact check. Did you say that 90% of the federal budget of Iraq comes from oil revenues?
Oil revenues, exactly. And the current oil revenues is about 2.5 billion US dollars on a monthly basis, and Iraq has to pay 4 billion US dollar just for the salaries of the government employees. The revenues alone will not be enough to pay the salaries of the employees, which is very important for the social stability of the countries. Leave aside the spending for the health and others.
Thank you very much. And then one other question from Omid. I don't think you gave us your view on a possible agreement between the US, Saudi, and Russia. Some people are saying the US and Saudi are going to partner more with each other. Others can't imagine, since it's hurting both of them, that Saudi and Russia will continue this. Do you have a forecast for this?
No, but I know that there are discussions among different countries, not only in these 3 countries, but other oil-producing countries. I am talking with OPEC Secretary General. I am talking with several oil and energy ministers around the world. The situation is so that what Saudi Arabia, US, and Russia will decide will be critically important, especially here. I wanted to highlight the critical importance of Saudi Arabia as a responsible supplier up to now, and as the president of the G20, one expects Saudi Arabia meets the requirements, meets the expectations of its friends and allies across the world, and make a once again positive contribution to the stability of the oil markets and stability of the financial markets.
Thank you for that. I have a number of questions, and by the way, thanks to everyone on the call. I'm getting to a lot of these questions, and they're really good because many of them were questions I was going to raise. I have a number of questions regarding how this impacts clean energy, how this impacts the transition. Let me put this question with a little bit of a news update. In the 2 trillion, 2.2 trillion, whatever it is, package, the U.S. package, there were 3 things regarding energy, at least. Randy Bell, the director of our Global Energy Center, has really looked at this. He's writing about this for our own use and for our own site and readers. So in the original package, there was $3 billion expenditure that the Republicans were pushing for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That was taken out. From the Democratic side, there was support for clean energy, which you've called for, Dr. Birol, in your writings, and that was taken out. There was also a provision for aviation that they should reduce their carbon footprint to be getting all the support that they'll be getting, and there was also no deal on that. So some of what you would have liked to see out of this package isn't there. I wonder if you have thoughts on that, but more generally, in the fiscal stimulus, in the various bills that you're seeing, what impact do you see that there's going to be on the transition and clean energy? Particularly Julia Bedini, energy reporter with MLEX in Brussels, was asking about that clean energy transition, particularly in the EU, where the Commission is and was trying to push forward its Green Deal.
Thank you very much. This is a very important question as well. Now, currently we have a major problem, the medical problem. First, governments have to address these medical problems. Then they have to build firewalls for the economies of the countries around the world. Thousands, millions of people are going to lose jobs. Businesses, small businesses are going to lose their clients. So governments, as a second thing, they have to build firewalls for their economies. But then many governments are in the process of preparing stimulus packages, huge packages, in order to provide an economic recovery, which is very good. It is United States, it is Europe, it is China, it is Japan, everywhere around the world. How these packages are going to be designed will be extremely important. Yes, we have a major problem, coronavirus. Yes, our economy have to recover, but we shouldn't forget that we have another problem, which is bringing the global emissions down. This is another strategic problem we are facing. Now, Mr. Kemp, we said a few weeks ago, we gave a very good news, in my view, to the entire world. You and me, we were in Davos in January, and I can tell you, it is the 14th year in a row I went to Davos as the chair of the energy board there, and I have never seen climate change being such an important topic, not only for the NGOs, but also for the government leaders, investors, and everything. Of course, the current station changed the entire picture. But we shouldn't forget a major challenge as well. And the good news we have given the world is that everybody was expecting 2019 global emissions was increasing once again. And we said, no, they are flatlined. They did not increase 2019. And this year, we are expecting global emissions to decline. This is, of course, decline of the emissions are it's a good news, but for wrong reasons. They are declining because economic meltdown, not because of the right energy policies. So what should we do? We should make sure that the economy goes up, but emissions continue to go down. How can we do that? We can do that by providing the elements of clean energy transitions in the stimulus packages. What are those? Let me make a couple of suggestions or put certain things on the table which can be different for different countries, but can give an idea. For example, the modernization of the housing, the houses around the world, buildings, improving their efficiency. This will, on one hand, reduce the emissions, reduce the energy expenses, and will create a lot of jobs around the world, because the construction sector will go through very difficult times after that. The huge push for energy efficiency for the buildings, modernization of the buildings, will create jobs, will give a push to economic growth, at the same time reduce the emissions. Second, utility scale renewable energies, wind, solar. Compared to 10 years ago, we had stimulus packages. Today, renewables are much cheaper, and building windmills will have also spillover effects for the economy. Another one, giving support to manufacturing of the batteries, or for hydrogen electrolyzers. They are all behind the laboratory phase, and they need mass scale deployment. So what I'm saying is, today, rightly so, governments are focusing to build the firewall around our economies. But in the next chapter, stimulus packages, stimulus package number 1, 2, or 3, clean energy transitions, and boosting the resilience of our energy systems must be at the heart of those packages. And I am working with many countries. IEA is working with many countries around the world to provide ideas, advice, how we can do that in a way. On one hand, it helps those measures to boost the economic recovery and at the same time accelerate the clean energy transitions and help us to build a resilient electricity energy system.
So, Dr. Birol, one question that was on my list, and I've also had a couple of people asking as well in the chat room, is about electricity. You've really, you're one of the world's leading experts on this and where it's going. You've written recently as well with commentary that electricity networks, backbone of today's power systems, they become even more important in energy transitions. And you talked particularly not just about what the crisis has taught us about the resources for the systems, but also the physical assets and human capital. We have a question as well here from Elliot Roseman of U.S. Energy Association. Dr. Birol, could you talk about the implications of the changes we're seeing over the longer term for electricity? So over the longer term, but particularly what sort of impact of COVID, and then he asked additionally impacts for coal generation and climate change emerging from the current crisis.
So, Mr. Kemp, we are, I don't know, you must be in DC, I am in Paris, I am confined. I am continuing my life without seeing my beloved colleagues, many friends. I am happy to not to enjoy some of the food that I enjoy in the French restaurants. We can do without many things, but we cannot do without electricity. Electricity is today, we understand better under these conditions. It is indispensable. Our entire communication system, that we are still teleworking, that we are talking with DC, I talk with Tokyo, I talk with Baghdad, I talk with the Ottawa. This is still thanks to electricity. Hospitals today providing excellent service, the doctors, the nurses, they can try to help the coronavirus patients through having electricity. It is indispensable 24/7. So first of all, I think it is time to all of us to appreciate the electricity, how important it is, and it is extremely important to appreciate the work of the engineers. Engineers are one of the profession which doesn't get, in my view, recognition that they deserve, and the workers working still 24/7. This is one issue. So we need 24/7 electricity. Therefore, electricity security is extremely important. If we had a problem with electricity blackouts, the entire system will collapse. So therefore, we have to be very careful. There are some challenges. What are those? One of them is renewable energies. I mentioned solar and wind. They are clean and they are getting cheaper and cheaper, but they are not always there when we need them. They may not be always there when we need them. When the electricity demand is up, the peak demand, we may well see that there is no sun or wind at that time. How are we going to cope with this problem, especially with the perspective of higher renewable shares? We need flexibilities. With flexibilities, and we need to appreciate, in my view, the firm capacity in the electricity markets. What are those? For example, hydropower, very important. And in the countries where it is retained, nuclear power, very important. We have to appreciate those, and we have to make sure that our system, future electricity system, is built in a secure way. In the past, we have seen oil security was very important, still very important, but in my view, electricity security is very important as well. One other issue, cybersecurity. I know the Atlantic Council, among other things, looks at the cybersecurity issue, and a cyber attack on the grids we have around the world could have major implications, because the world became much more digital now, and the surface of the possible attack is much bigger, and the vulnerability of our electricity systems, of our society, is much more vulnerable to the cyber attacks on our electricity grids. So in my view, from this coronavirus period, when we come out, one of the issues which will be clear for many, how indispensable electricity is and how important the electricity security is for all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Birol. There is no energy shortage, Dr. Birol, among those asking questions. So I'm going to ask two at a time, particularly when they're very factual questions. One is actually my own, and it really comes from a bunch of different people. It's kind of a rolled up question, which is with low energy demand, with an economic crisis, cheap oil and gas, uncertain pathway to recovery, who knows when that's really going to happen. Are we really not talking about the whole clean energy transition being put on hold? So that's question number one. And then a question from our friend Halima Crawford, a Atlantic Council board member, one of the big experts in the field from RBC, and that is, even if there is no OPEC plus deal, when will storage fill up and prevent Saudi Arabia or any other producer from increasing supply? I think it's a really interesting question. So the first question is, are we not going to see the clean energy transition on hold until all of this sorts itself out? And secondarily, what about storage and impact on Saudi Arabia and other producers increasing supply?
Thank you very much for all these questions. First of all, there will be definitely major pressure on all energy carriers, among them and the clean energy. So for solar, wind, the many countries up to now enjoyed government support for clean energy transitions. Many governments and many companies may well give a second thought, shall we, in this very tight economic context they are in, should they continue to support clean energy sources such as solar, wind, or batteries, or hydrogen, and or carbon capture and storage, and others? In my view, yes. And we shouldn't forget that the coronavirus is a major problem. The economic recovery is a major problem, but the climate change is a major problem as well. So for me, it is important to note the following. Before this crisis, many governments around the world, many companies around the world have set targets how much and how seriously they will reduce their emissions. Now, in my view, this is a test to see whether or not they will fulfill their commitments or they will change their commitments, alter their commitments in this change in the market conditions. It will not be easy, definitely. And once again, the first push should be on the medical part. Second push should be on the building the firewalls, financial firewalls of our economies, unemployment, loss of business for the small business, but stimulus packages can focus on the clean energy transitions to help them. And many of them now, in fact, can help to boost the economic recovery. Coming back to the question of Mrs. Croft, I can see that as a result of the current, not only the OPEC plus countries' position, but also as a result of decline of demand, sometime very soon we may have the global oil storage capacity may be completely full. But once again, I believe, I want to underline this again and again, I will underline more in the next days to come. It is extremely important to keep producers take a more responsible position. And here I want to underline the past excellent records of Saudi Arabia as a stabilizer of the oil markets to take the necessary steps. Very important, but as important as that is the free fall of global oil demand. and the global oil demand recovery will not be easy and will not be quick.
Thank you for that. Anna Shirevskaya of Bloomberg News, what is your estimate for global natural gas demand this year? Are we going to see a massive decline in consumption? And then what's the implications on the supply side, such as, and this is a new word for me, probably not for many of you in the energy world, such as shut-ins of US LNG plants, or shutdowns, I guess one would, that would be the word I would have used. But I think that's this must be the more current word, shut-ins. So outlook for global natural gas, Dr. Birol, and could we actually have some shutdowns of LNG plants or shut-ins?
Now, there are interesting things happening for natural gas markets, and also for the something we didn't talk, coal markets as well around the world. For the natural gas markets, especially those contracts which are indexed to oil prices, there is a huge decline. There is a huge decline we are seeing, and also the demand is also heavily affected from that in Europe, in Asia. There is a big decline there. Having said that, it's because of the economy. Having said that, what is also happening, while the gas prices are going down significantly as a result of the oil prices going down and the demand falling down, coal prices remain broadly stable. Oil fell down, gas fell down, but the coal prices remain stable. In Australian coal, the South African, European coal prices remain stable. And what we can see, that we may well expect a lot of push or the switch from coal to gas, coal becoming more expensive vis-a-vis cheaper gas, and this may well have implications again for the gas demand. This is what I am saying, and many of the countries who are LNG exporters, such as Australia, such as Qatar, whose contracts are based on oil prices, will seriously suffer, and I would expect that the US LNG will be also negatively affected from that. We may well see around the world a lot of shut-in. It is the jargon that people use, Mr. Kemp, the energy politics, we use this. But if you shut down in the LNG in many countries around the world, and Algeria is again one of the countries which will suffer from that, because their contracts are also many of them linked to oil prices.
Dr. Birol, I promised we wouldn't take too much of your time today, so let me throw out a final two questions. You've been very generous with us and with your time. They're both larger questions, but I'll leave to you what you want to go to. First is the question of hydrogen, and I know you've talked a lot about that. One person asking about how you see the future being influenced, and also talking about the report that the IEA has put out, whether you're going to continue that sort of work. The other, and I think this is a really important question for the Atlantic Council, because we really look at the global community and the geopolitics of all of this. This was brought to us by our own Ariel Cohen. Let me just scroll it up quickly. What is your recommendation to the oil-producing countries which can balance their budgets at high oil prices, so $80 a barrel and higher? As you know, Dr. Birol, they're courting economic and social disaster. So what sort of approach should they be taking? And that goes along with the question that's also been asked of what's the best opinion on of how we take this on, and who do you think, what could be the geopolitical impact of COVID-19? You talked earlier about what countries may be hit hardest by this period of time of energy disruption, and maybe you can just close with us of what sort of lasting impact on what countries, what do you worry about most looking at this period of time? If you look at this entire picture, what do you pick out of it and then worry about the most, and where do we have to put most of our energies?
So there, as you mentioned, Mr. Kemp, there are two very big questions. It will take a lot of time to discuss, to debate with you and with all the questions here. For hydrogen, now, it will depend on what the governments will decide. To make it simpler for all of us, today the major problem with hydrogen, it is still expensive and we don't have a large-scale use. Now, it is, when we look at the hydrogen, the biggest part why it is expensive is something, Mr. Kemp, it is, we call it electrolyzer, which is a very important part of the hydrogen. And this is not a rocket science. It needs mass-scale deployment. And in my view, if, for example, Europeans, it's a very important issue for Europe hydrogen, if European stimulus package would provide some support for manufacturing mass-scale production of the electrolyzer, this would bring the cost of electrolyzer down and make the hydrogen much more economic. And in my view, linking this hydrogen, for example, with natural gas or offshore wind can be a very good outcome for Europe after the coronavirus period we have. I have next week discussions on the stimulus package that Europe is working with the leaders of European Union who are in charge of the European Green Deal, and I will iterate this issue. So who are the winners, who are the losers from that? We will see who are the winners, who are the losers. But there are, of course, many losers. The first losers are those who lose their beloved ones, the families. This is before going to energy sector, for me, this is the main loser, people losing their friends, family members, and colleagues. These are the main losers, and my all sympathy goes to them. In terms of the energy markets, oil markets, of course, energy industry, oil industry will be badly hit. There will be lots of thousands of layoffs in the companies, not in all of them, but many of them. But again, I am sorry to say, but the countries which will be hit here are the low-income oil exporting countries, such as Iraq, such as Nigeria, such as Algeria, such as Gabon, such as Ecuador. These countries will be very badly hit, and some of them are going through very difficult political environment, and therefore these countries will be definitely lose a lot. And I hope the international community, the international financial institutions will give priority to the low-income developing countries, oil exporters or oil importers, regardless, to support them. So I wanted to finish this by saying two things, Mr. Kemp, if I may. So first, one recommendation to Atlantic Council, to you and to colleagues, and to myself and to everybody. I say, I got messages while talking to you. Several hundred people are watching us. To my recommendation, request, and friendly appeal is, we are 45 minutes or almost 1 hour talking now. The first thing what we should do is go and wash our hands. So this is the first thing we should all do in order to be safe for ourselves and for the others. It's the first thing I want to say. And finally, what I wanted to say is that this is a major medical challenge, for sure. There is a major economic challenge, for sure. But there is also an ethical test. This ethical test is very important. The other day, Mr. Kemp, I was watching the French television. They were interviewing the small businesses. And one of the hairdressers said, I am losing my job. because they are all closed, the coiffeur. And he said, and we will see, jokingly, in a few weeks of time, poor or rich, we will see the real hair color of all of my clients because they will not be able to go to the hairdresser. So after this, during and after this period, we will see the true colors of the governments, leaders, businesses, all of them. And I hope all of us take the right position, all of us stay in the right side of the history, and will all contribute to this very big, unprecedented challenge we are all facing in the mood of solidarity. And I am sure we can do it. And as I said, social distancing are bringing all of us closer. And I wanted to thank you for this opportunity for giving to me that I talk with you, Mr. Kemp, and with the hundreds of people listening us around the world. Thank you very much.
Dr. Birol, what a wonderful way to close. On a lighter note, I know that social distancing means that you can't be so active in your honorary membership of the Galatasaray football club in Turkey. That's also an important part. We're going to have to miss the Washington Nationals World Series last year. We're going to have to miss opening day tomorrow. But you hit the point, which is what small suffering that is when you think about the individual suffering of families that are affected, and the fact that we have to pull together not just economically, not just medically, but as you said, ethically. I think that's just a wonderful, wonderful way to end this. So best wishes to you, your family, your whole IEA family. Thank you so much for everyone on the call. Thank you so much for coming in such numbers, and we'll be back to you with more ways to keep us connected through these kinds of convenings. We're being very active right now. And I want to make a special thanks to the team behind this at the Atlantic Council. They've shifted to telework more smoothly, more effectively, more collaboratively than I ever could have hoped. A particular thanks to Randy Bell, who runs the Global Energy Center, and Emily Burlinghouse, who's in charge of this, and then the events and technical and a collaborative team behind this at the Atlantic Council. Again, let's go away with Dr. Birol's urge to us to pass all the tests, but most of all the ethical tests. Thank you so much.